as if you needed to, if worst came to worst, you could rent for a short period an appropriate truck to use while we get this thing back to the board's
We got a head shake down here.
No, actually, we have already investigated that, and we cannot rent a vehicle to pull one of our own district-owned trailers. We had investigated that several months ago, so that is not an option. The companies will not allow us to do that.
Okay. Well, Mrs. Yard.
So I would like to move that we table the truck, because if we've tabled the trailer, I think they go.
We have a second to Mrs. Yard to these
I
tables.
second that.
Okay. Comments or questions on the motion to table? If not, all those in favor of tabling this motion as well as the one before it? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. One nay. Mrs. Miller. So it passes 6-1. So both motions are tabled. And we will be revisiting these first at the facilities, the Committee of the Whole meeting on the 23rd of July, and then presumably at the board meeting on the 28th of July. Mrs. Schmidt.
Okay. Second is a motion, number 2 is a motion to accept and award Bedminster Elementary floor tile abatement and replacement quote from Luzon for $6,268.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve, accept and award a quote for abatement and replacement for floor tile. Comments or questions from board members? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Schmidt?
A motion to accept and award the bleacher removal and associated work at Papayoter Field to Flynn Wrecking Incorporated for $78,000.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Regomo to approve the award, accept and approve the award for bleacher removal and the associated work at Papayoter Field. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Miller?
Mrs. Johnson, actually this is to you regarding the Papayoter Field. I would like some clarification. We just voted on approximately $1.5 million for the bleachers at Helen, is that correct? 1.4 something?
Yes.
And this is $78,000. And if we factor in the 6%, that's about $94,000. So rate number up to over $1.6 million. And the original projection was for 1.7 for 2 fields. Now we're up to almost 1.7 and we're not nearly complete. Is there a way we're going to make up this money, or can you explain the difference? The 1.7 that you gave us was for 2 fields. We're now up to almost 1.7 and we're not near complete.
I think what we said, Mrs. Miller, was that was for the bleachers only. When we gave those numbers, when you send the architects out there and the engineers, you never know what they're going to find.
No,
so.
I have your numbers.
I know, but then remember there was an updated report to that.
But it was for 2 fields. I wonder how we got so far off.
I think I gave that report. If you want me to resend it, I will.
I would like to see that again, and maybe has that been out to the public? Did the public see those numbers? I just don't understand why we're almost at 1.7 now, and we're not nearly complete.
One of the issues is the board approved 5,000 seats. Dr. Radigan recommended 3,000 seats. There's a big difference, obviously, on the cost per seat basis. And personally, I think 3,000 is inadequate. When we got the numbers from the high school for the number of attendees, it showed in the biggest games, typically the Thanksgiving Day game, that there were just about 3,000 people, under 3,000. But that is only the people who have paid attendance. There obviously are those, band is a good example, and others, who sit in the stands and do, I mean, we certainly don't ask, nor should we ask the band to pay to go to our football games. But so that there could be, I believe, as many as several hundred or maybe 500 additional seats that are needed for those popular games, if that's the right term. And we also had a couple of games that were less than 1,000 people. So some nights we may not.
I just don't see how these numbers are in such a disparity between the 2 numbers.
And I don't
think
remember the,
2,000 seats is gonna really make that much of a difference.
Well,
Not that much of a difference.
I forget, Mr. Loeffler might be able to tell us what the cost per
Were
seat
the- I guess I
was,
should- I
but
should
it's
ask-
significant, I believe.
Well, I guess I'm asking were the original numbers, a fairy tale?
So it's yours. Have a second. So 2,000 additional seats.
$5,000 seats is Rosebud 1.2. And if we do 240 times 3,000, 720. So 720 minus 1, $600,000 difference.
$600,000 difference.
Which isn't,
3,000 to 5,000
I
seats.
know, we're still not even close to that 1.7, and I'm assuming that you and Mr. Spendendorf, if I'm saying the name correctly, were part of the original projections for the 1.7 million for 2 fields, is that right?
That's not correct.
Well, where did those numbers come from?
The numbers came, the last number that I think you're talking about, if you look at some of the minutes that were sent out when we had multiple meetings, that was a compromise number for the two. The number to do this field has always been 2.3, I think, for the buildings, the roadways, the bleachers.
Which field are we putting to?
This one.
I know, which one is that, the high
Hellman,
school?
high school field.
Thank you. I'm geographically challenged.
The other, the demolition at South was just, that was one more thing because they had to come down. That wasn't part of.
It was part of
If
it.
you go back and look at Dr. Radigan's.
I will look at it, I've looked at it a
Okay,
few times.
I didn't,
It was
I didn't
both
put the
fields for
option
1.7 million.
you'll have to look at
I
the
will,
option.
thank you, I will. I'd just like to know how we got so far away from this.
Any other comments on this motion? Mrs. Yarborough?
I have a question. Mrs. Miller, you said 78,000 plus 6%. What's the 6, and then you said that takes it up to 90-some thousand?
Well, Dewey's percentage is at least 6%, isn't it?
Isn't that already included in the,
No,
It's not.
It's not
Mrs. Johnson said no.
it's not, but aren't the fees already included in the 78,000?
Mrs. Johnson
78
said no.
fees in charge.
It's just for that, okay.
Any other comments or questions? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 6-1. Mrs. Miller is the name. Mrs. Schmidt?
I have a motion to approve the PLIG IT capital project withdrawal schedule as presented on June 10th, 2014.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the capital project withdrawal schedule. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Schmidt?
Motion to obsolete the items as listed below in letters A through J.
We have a second for the obsolete items list. Moved by Mrs. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Deming to approve items A through J on the obsolete items list. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yardley?
I have a question. I just see that Grass, Guth, and Seiler, that they went to student distribution, so I was just wondering if that went well, Mrs. Johnson?
I have no
information yet, okay. So we'll get more information later, like in a month or two. I mean, as far as how, was there procedures? We talked about it at the last meeting.
Mr. Dillingham was actually meeting with the librarians today to come up with the procedures, because I did ask them to come up with the procedures that would work best for them.
Okay.
So they were meeting as part of their year end.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this motion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Schmidt?
And a motion to approve the contracts as listed below, A and B.
You have a second to the 2 contract approvals, one for Grass, one for Diver.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Regomo to approve the contracts. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Schmidt.
And the next facilities committee meeting is scheduled for, I believe that's July 23rd.
Third, I believe. Well, it originally was doubled up with the board meeting, but we have changed that. So for everyone's information, there will be a committee of the whole with any pressing issues from various committees on the night, I believe it's a Wednesday, but it's July 23rd. And then the full board meeting for July will be held on the 28th, but held alone without other distractions. Mrs. Johnson?
Dr. Yarnell, after the motion was passed, number 2, under facilities, Mr. Lufford notified me that that amount actually was split between 2 companies. Mr. Cox, how do we go about amending that at this point?
Which
Move on this one.
C2, the quote is a total of $6,268 divided by between 2 companies, Lazoon being $3,850 and Wright Flooring $2,418.
Just a simple, a new motion, correct? The prior vote.
Mrs. Schmidt, you're getting a workout tonight. I'm sure you'll volunteer for this position again soon.
Okay, so a motion to, or am I amending?
Just
Just do it as a regular
a
motion.
motion to correct the prior vote in accordance with the statement which Ms. Johnson just made. We'll do the trade.
So a motion to correct prior vote on the acceptance and awarding of Bedminster Elementary floor tile abatement and replacement quote to Luzon for amount of $3,850 and Wright Flooring for $2,418.
We have a second to the corrected motion.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Schmidt, seconded by Mrs. Yardley to approve the corrected motion to approve to 2 companies the floor tile abatement and replacement. Comments or questions from board members? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. And Mr. Loeffler, yes. Mrs. Schmidt,
Yes.
you have finished, I believe, correct?
We're done.
Okay. In all sorts of senses of that word, right? We will move on to finance. We do not have Mr. Sarnes here tonight. Are you, Mrs. Johnson, are you going to take the lead on this and I will do the motions?
I can go through them.
Okay, thank you.
The Facilities Committee met on June 10th as part of the Joint Finance and Facilities Committee meeting, and there were a number of events that took place that evening that were not approved on the June 10th special board meeting. The first is the motion to approve the Plan Con case submission, General Obligation Bond Series B of 2014.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve Plan Con K submission. Do we have a second to that motion? Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the Plan Con K submission. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
The next item is the payment of $1 per final notice to the tax collectors effective with the notices sent after July 1, 2014. And these are for those district taxpayers who have not paid their real estate bills by the time the end of the phase period before they go into penalty.
Okay. So I will make that motion to approve the payment of $1 per final notice effective with those sent out for this coming school year, starting July 1, 2014. This payment would be to the elected tax collectors. Do we have a second to the motion? Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the payment to tax collectors. Comments or questions from board members?
I have a question.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yeah, I went back into the minutes to see when the pay was approved, and it was January of 2013. And so in the minutes it says, and I wasn't on board at the time, it says it's $4 per bill. So is that per bill mailed or per bill collected? Do they collect, if people pay on a payment plan, are they paying $4 for each installment, or is it just $4 for the bill that's mailed?
It's $4 for each bill that is mailed, and the installments will be mailed separately, so an installment, the tax collector will be paid $12 on the bill that's an installment.
Do you know what percentage of our bills are paid on installments? No idea.
I don't have that information.
But it's not a large number, right? As I recall.
No, because you get a discount if you pay.
That's correct, you get a discount if you pay it in full versus the installment plan allows you to pay the face amount over 3 payments.
And you mentioned, I think at one of the other meetings, a number, like, what number of bills or final notices get sent out? Is it like 2,000 or something out of 19,000?
I think that's, again, I'm sorry, I don't have the information with me, Mrs. Yardley. I can, if you want, I can research that and get it back
Okay,
to you.
all right, thank you.
Do you have anything to add to this conversation?
No, other than that,
Cox?
I remember Ms. Johnson saying that it was roughly 2,000 bills that I mean, and that any advice I have on this matter, I've previously given an executive session because it fits into that exception to the Sunshine Law, and would propose that any further advice that I give be done in that context as well.
But you have no objection to our voting on this tonight?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
All right. Any other comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion? I'm sorry.
Nay, I'm sorry.
You are confusing me, Mrs. Miller. I'm easily confused at this hour, right? Yes, right. Thank you.
Nay.
Okay. Mrs. Cron, 6 yeas and 1 nay. Thank you. All right, that motion passes. We'll move on. Mrs. Johnson.
Yes, this is our renewal agreement with RMTS Nationwide for our 2014-15 stop loss. This also is moving the stop loss from a specific of $175,000 to a specific of $200,000.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the new stop loss agreement specific to a $200,000 limit. And the amount that it will cost us is $519,988 for the year. Mr. Tom, I'm sorry, are you seconding the motion or are you asking a question?
If you want me to do both, I'll do both.
Well, I'll be happy to do that, okay?
Okay, I'll second.
Okay.
In the discussion about this, we asked what the difference in cost was to go from 175 to 200. I don't remember the answer. Was there an answer to that question?
Yes, actually, I did send that out today, and do you have, this is the one,
It's about $90,000,
It's
right?
$90,000.
It's about $90,000 more if we go back to the $170,000. So it's a significant, well,
Do you want this?
my opinion is it's a significant number.
It is the cost of 175,000 is 600, for the 175, 609,149 versus the 200 specific at 519,988.
And just one last question. How have we come with the stop loss in prior years? Do we always exceed it?
This year, not, some years we exceeded, some years we don't. This happens to be a year that we are exceeding stop loss refunds of more than what we paid in. Which in turn is driving our costs up.
So obviously, whatever we do, we need to do something, is what you're telling us, I believe. Are there any other comments or questions from board members on this motion?
I have a question. So is it the $200,000, that's per incident or per person?
That would be per person.
Per person, right, okay.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. That is correct, Mrs. Miller?
Correct.
You're not? Okay. Wanted to know. Moving on. Mrs.
Actually, the premiums were already passed at the June 10th meeting, so we do not have to vote on those again.
Okay, so we are eliminating motion 4 as listed in the agenda. And
Then we go on to the contracts. And I would like Dr. Brunel, I asked Mrs. Crum to let you know if we could pull item E from the agenda this evening, based on, we're not completely done reviewing it with the solicitors.
Okay. The board members see that item E is going to be removed from tonight's agenda. I will make the motion that we approve the contracts as listed in items A through J with the exception of E. Do we have a second to that motion? Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the contracts listed. Comments or questions from board members? Not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next.
Okay, we have a special settlement agreement for student number 2014-48 on the agenda to be approved.
I will move that we approve the settlement agreement as listed. I'm sorry, do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve a settlement agreement. Comments or questions from board members? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
I abstain.
I'm sorry, motion carries 6-0-1. Next, Mrs. Johnson.
The annual PSBA membership renewal for 2014-15 at the amount of $12,545.
I will make a motion that we approve the PSBA membership. Do we have a second to that motion? Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mr. Deming to approve our renewal in PSBA. I will comment that we've held a membership in this organization for more than a decade, and the increase in cost, as I recall, is just over 10%. So versus things such as the gasoline that we all love to buy, I would say this is a bargain, relatively speaking. Do we have any other comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
We have a number of student activity requests. The first request is to close the West Rock Hill General Purpose account. The amount remaining is $21.97, and they have asked for that to be transferred to their deferred revenue account.
Okay. I presume we could do both of these together, A and B, unless someone has an objection to
As I
that.
said, then we had 3 accounts that have submitted renewals. That would be South Middle School Drama Club, the Dialer Student Activity Account, and North Middle School Yearbook.
Okay. So I will move that we approve the closure of 1 student activity account and the renewal of 3 more. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mr. Regomo to approve the student activity account changes. Comments or questions from board members? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Annually, the board is required to approve student tuition waivers. That list was provided to the board previously.
So I move that we approve the 2013-2014 student tuition waivers. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Yardley to approve the student tuition waivers. Comments or questions from board members? Not. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson, please don't read all of these to us.
We now have a number of bids that were reviewed at the previous board meeting. This is for supplies to be used throughout the schools. So that would be items A through K.
Okay. I will move that we accept and award the bids for the athletic, medical, and general supplies, which is bid number 15-100. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve and accept and award the bids. Comments or questions from board members? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
Annually, the board is required to approve bank depositories. We've listed the bank depositories for 2014-15, and there is no change to this listing on last year.
So I will move that we approve the bank depositories listed in a motion on 11 from A through J. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mrs. Yardley to approve bank depositories. Comments, questions from board members? Not? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
The district also participates in a number of cooperative purchasing agreements, and annually we ask that you approve those as well, so A through G.
Okay. I move that we approve the cooperative purchasing participation in A through G. Comments or, I'm sorry, each time. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mrs. Yardley to approve the cooperative purchasing participation. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next.
The board also, we're asking the board to approve lunch prices for 2014-15. There's no change in the prices from 13-14 school year.
Okay, I move that we approve the 2014-2015 lunch prices as listed in the motion, motion number 13. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
More than that.
Moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mrs. Yardley. Comments or questions from board members on the lunch prices? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
The next item is the motion to approve the business office to make payment of all bills received and payable through June 30th, 2014 as necessary. Bill list will be given to all board members prior to the release of the checks. Any checks in question will be resolved before they are released for payment.
Do we have a second to the motion to pay bills during the period through June 30th?
No matter how much they are.
Second. Moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt. Comments or questions from board members? Not. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Annually, the board approves the various insurance packages that we have. I've listed those here. We have several packages through PSBA Insurance Trust. That's our package policy, commercial auto, excess liability, school leaders legal liability, privacy protection, which is new this year, and our workers' compensation, which would be a move to a new company as well this year. We also asked for approval for AIG for all sports band and cheerleaders coverage, as well as coverage, voluntary student accident coverage through AIG, which is parent paid.
Okay, so I move that we approve the PSPA Insurance Trust policies as well as the AIG policies. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the insurance packages. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yardley?
There's no amount listed under letter B. Is it in, maybe it's not considered revised?
How much?
I don't have
Because I don't have it.
It was not, it didn't go in the board
We
packet.
can go in the packet.
So anybody who has the one on
I'm not aware, I'm sorry, I'm not aware of that. Which one do you need?
AIG, all sports band and
All
cheerleaders.
sports band and cheerleaders, $19,009. The student accident insurance parent paid school time coverage is $30. 24-hour coverage is $112.
Is that per month or
That's
per year?
per
Per
year.
season?
Per year. That's all I didn't realize you had that.
Okay, any other questions or comments from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
Motion to approve the following purchase order. This is for E+ CoStar's 3 IT hardware contract in the amount of $37,665. This is titled, these are computers for the Title II program.
I'll make a motion to approve the E+ contract. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yarnell, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve this contract. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yardley?
I knew what the Title II program.
Okay, actually, I'm going to go back here. The 16A is not the, laptops for the Title I, it's Title I program.
Title I.
So let's move on. The motion for 16A is just for the CoStar's contract information that I believe I has specifically sent out information previously on this. I'm sorry, wasn't ready for this evening.
So, is it 16A we're doing?
16A, right, this, and if you need additional information on that, I will have to run out of time.
Mr. Deming, do you care to share?
I-
Or you don't have the information?
This,
All I'm saying is I got all those numbers, so I think it's a late addition. Then I need all the help I can get.
So was this on
yes, this was this is,
in the July 10th?
I do believe this was the July 10th package, and this is information I do believe is for infrastructure items.
Is this something we need to approve tonight?
Yes. So if you wanted to move forward, I'll come back and answer that question.
If you would, that would be fine. So
Go
let's,
through the rest of them.
yes, we can put it under unfinished business.
Thank you.
It's perfectly there.
Motion to approve the 30 Lumino laptop computers from E-Plus Technology for use in the Title I program in the amount of $19,020.
So I make a motion to put this E-Plus contract. Do we have a second for the? Okay, moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mr. Thompson, to approve the E-Plus contract for $19,000 change. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Yardley?
So we have an addendum on our table to the finance committee, but that's not on there.
These are commitments for,
That's
that's the
not,
one,
that's
that's a
something
separate
different.
issue.
I know, but I don't have that one that you just said for the Title I program, it's not in my, or it's not on our agenda, it's not on the agenda. And it's.
This, the agenda that you have, I believe, is what went in the board packet, right?
Right, yeah.
Mrs. Cron sent out a
It's
revised agenda
Okay.
on Friday. So it's on the revised agenda, not on the original agenda.
Yeah, I saw the revised agenda, but it's just, I already made notes on this, and we have too many agendas.
All right, so I made the motion. Do we have, Mr. Thompson was the second. Do we have other comments or questions from board members on this $19,000 item? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, we do have an addendum that was here, and this was discussed on the June 10th meeting as part of the budget process, but was not approved on June 10th. And this is the commitments for the 2013-14 school year. And it's each year at this time, we list the commitments, and then during our closing out process as part of the audit, we come back with the exact amounts. So I will be asking the board to approve commitments for the year ending 13-14 to appear on our annual financial report, future retirement rate increases, e-finance software costs, equipment and supplies, and technology. All the amounts to be determined.
I'll make a motion that we approve these. These are basically fund balance type of commitments that we're talking about for anyone who that's not clear for. Do I have a second to the motion?
Second.
Moved by Dr. Yano, seconded by Mr. Deming, to approve fund balance commitments for the year ending 2013-14 with the amounts to be determined basically by the closure and audit. Comments or questions from board members? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, the next meeting is going to be held July 23rd. Good.
Thank you. From here, we'll move to Mrs. Miller doing the intermediate hearing.
Thank you. The Bucks County IU met on June 17th. I was not in attendance, however, I do have the following information. Through presentation, it was learned the district support team works with the 13 districts and technical schools to support their goals and needs. Following is a list of just some of the services and supports provided by the DCIU. Comprehensive strategic planning, supporting teach